Alright, welcome to the first video I'm making for my new channel. The first I'm making, probably not the first I'm going to release. It's kind of weird to start with a tier list, but yeah, I'm gonna be ranking the parts according to PvP viability. Because why not? This list was made by Antithesis, and yeah. Alright, let's just get in there. Airlocks. We don't use airlocks in PvP mostly because they are mostly needed for career. But we do use them in one case. If you want to do crew detach, but you want to detach crew from like some strange position, you need airlocks. But we really want to avoid that because it takes a long time and it's kind of unwieldy. So, but sometimes it really is necessary to do it. So I guess I'll put it in meh. Ammo factories, pretty much. I wouldn't say ammo factories are really bad. The issue is that most weapons are so ammo efficient that you just don't need the additional ammo. Factories only become viable once you need a certain amount of ammo, and there really isn't anything that requires that much ammo. Like, there is a niche use case if you have flak on like avoiders, for example. Those eat a lot of ammo, and sometimes deck cannon walls like to use them because deck cannons tend to eat a ton of ammo, but those are really niche use cases. All right, armor. Well, armor. The thing is, you need armor on every ship except on the very light ships, the ultralights especially. So, but on most other ships, it's a must-have. So I'll just put them in S tier. Um, this armor piece specifically, is that useful? You do want. I'll read the other armor pieces first. The triangles are very useful on railgun barrels, but not much else. So, what do I do if something has a niche use case on a good ship? On a very good ship. I guess I'll just put it in good for now. The armor wedges are S tier because of their high penetration resistance. And the other two armor pieces are kind of meh, to be honest. You mostly use them to round the edges, or sometimes you can use them if you want to have really thin back or side armor. I guess 3x1s are frequently used on TB rails. I'll keep them here for now. Yeah, the things with structure. I guess you also use those on TB rails to connect the barrel. You don't really want to use the other ones. You only want to use those if you connect like a structure bumper with armor. So I will put all of those into meh. Okay, crew. Okay, barracks are a must-have, obviously. The quarters are also a must-have. On most ships, it's inefficient, or you can't just run barracks alone, so you need quarters. Yeah, the bunks on on some ships you probably can avoid using them. Like the smaller the crew rooms get, the less efficient they are. But sometimes you need this little step in between. So yeah, I'd definitely say this is still a must use. Okay. Boost thrusters. Like they had a recent nerf, and that way now they only apply thrust when they get full power again after they have boosted. Um, they are just bad on pretty much every ship. They have their niche on small shield avoiders, so for that alone, I'll give them the C tier, but on any other ship, they are just really, really bad. Okay, now I'll do all of the control rooms together. Small control rooms you never want to use. Oh, okay. I mean, more recently with the MRT ships, you often use one control room and a small one, so I think I'll definitely have to put those two in S tier. The bridge is a little bit more niche. On most ships you can make do with just two control rooms, which is more efficient than using one bridge because you need less crew. And yeah, that's it. Because you need less crew. But the bridge is better on ultralight ships because it has less weight overall. I'll just put it in must have. The bridge is a little bit less used than the other parts, but that's alright. Capacitors. You really want to avoid capacitors. Like on efficient ships, you can almost always avoid using capacitors. The only reason to run capacitors is point defense, which isn't really used in PvP, or railguns, which is a legitimate use case. But you only use them on small shield railgun ships. And oh, sorry, there's also the use case of supplying MRT. But those are also pretty weird niche setups. I'm not really experienced with those kinds of setups, but I know that they can be okay sometimes. So I'll just put them in C because of how niche they are. They are niche, but they are good on those niche ship types. I guess I should put them in B. Okay, chain guns are in A tier. Chain gun rammers are pretty good. Not top of the meta, but they are really good. Nothing more to say, I guess. Okay, I'll just do all of the civilian factories at once. Because they are all unusable in PvP. Tri-steel, enriched uranium. Not much to say about those. I'll also put in the other civilian stuff that isn't used in PvP. For example, sensor array, pretty bad. And yeah, the larger hyperdrives. There's really no reason to use large hyperdrives because hyperdrive efficiency isn't really important. You just want to use the small ones because they are cheaper. And yeah, I'll come to those later probably. Is there any other civilian part? Oh, there are lights. Yeah, we are not building aesthetic ships here. And the resource collectors. Oh, manipulator beams, as they are called now. I mean, the renaming has been quite a while ago now, but yeah. Corridors, yeah, you need corridors on your ship. Same for walkways. Admittedly, there are ultralight on ultralight ships. You don't want to use walkways, but there are so many ships that use walkways. Every other ship requires the use of walkways. I think we can put them on there. Okay, deck cannons. Deck cannons are bad. They have a very slow projectile speed, and yeah, in the fast meta we have, you can't really use them. You need a lot of armor to protect them, and that slows you down. And being slower is pretty bad because you need a ram lock if you have deck cannons. And if you face another rammer, for example, a chain gun rammer, you just lose because the chain gun rammer will deal more damage and split you in half before you can even break through the armor, not even the shields. Okay. Disruptors. I think I can put disruptors in A tier. They are an excellent support weapon. They are the best weapon at suppressing shields in the game. You can use them as a support weapon on ions, was their traditional use case. You use them on cannon walls, which are still very good. You can use them. What else can you use them on? I don't know. Like, I know disruptors are very strong. Oh, avoiders, of course. Yeah, avoiders are pretty strong, but I think it's justified to put them in there. I feel like cannon walls and avoiders are strong enough to justify them being in A tier. Okay. EMP factories. Yeah. EMPs, if you use them with factories, are really meh. Maybe even bad. I'm not sure. I'll just leave them in meh. Which is surprising because we have such a shield heavy meta and so many ultralight ships, but the issue is that the EMPs have a hard time hitting, and when they hit, you can often just tank them on the front, and the shields recharge quickly enough before you get into range again. So, yeah. All right. Engine rooms. Engine rooms are a must-have. Nothing much to say. If you, yeah, you just have to use engine rooms. Okay, explosive charges are, they are amazing. You can use them on walls to split them in emergencies. You can use them on rammers to detach horns. You can use them on swarms to separate the ships, so you can get around the 5 ships maximum limit. They are a great utility tool, pretty cheap. I think it's justified to put them in there. The items here are in no particular order, by the way. I just put them in there. Fire extinguishers are a must-have, except if you're Slowking, maybe. Flak guns are pretty bad. They have gotten a absolutely horrible buff in the past. And now they have 4 ammo slots again. In the past, they only had 2. But they are still bad. Like, before then, they would be horrible. Now they are bad. I mean, you can use flag walls or flag avoiders, but they are just worse than their other alternatives. I don't know why you would use flag. Like, they, in the past they dealt a ton of damage, and that's why they were nerfed. But now, as a damage dealing source, they are just so horrible and Sure, they can get rid of projectiles, but yeah, I don't know if it's worth it. It's not worth it for them to for ships to run them only to intercept projectiles. Okay, heavy blasters. Um, yeah, I think I have to put them in A tier just because of avoiders. A lot of people say that blasters really need some kind of buff or something. Mm, because they are so good on so few ship types. Like they are all right on avoiders. Pretty much every avoider uses them, but no other ship type wants to use them. But I think avoiders are so good that it's justified to put them in here. Same thing as for chain guns. Chain guns have chain gun rammers, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I made a chain gun orbiter that I think is really good, but people have not copied it so far, which I'm sad about, but yeah. Alright, HE Missile Factory. That's in A tier because Morbitas are pretty good right now. I will put the missiles here. You never want to use storage for missiles because they eat a lot of ammo and you really need all of that additional ammo. So HE missiles and the HE missile factory are pretty much always used together. Alright, huge thrusters. The thing is, huge thrusters have kind of been just getting replaced by MRT. In the past, they were definitely S tier, but now I don't know if I should even put them in B tier. Like at the time of recording this, huge thrusters still have ramp down, which is gonna get removed soon, similar to how MRT have ramp down, and that's making them a lot less attractive. I think if ramp down does get removed, I hope that we will see them in A tier again. But even right now, TB Rail use huge thrusters. Walls are not as good as they were before. They use huge thrusters. I think it's justified to put them in here. Alright, now we got to the hyper jump stuff. Yeah, I mean, nobody really uses hyper jump ships, but there are hyper jump ships out there which are decent. Like you can do a missile stick that you can just jump around and you don't need any engines, or you can also do like a trap where there's one deck cannon ship and one like nuke stick or railgun stick that jumps forwards and then punishes the opponent. The thing is, nobody uses those ships. There was only one player who used them, plays, but he's now inactive. So for that reason, I'm just gonna put them in the middle in C tier. I should build another hyperdrive ship and try it out in the current meta. I think it's still decent at least. But really, they don't see a lot of use. Okay, let's just move to the next ship, to the next part, which is ions. Ions is pretty hard. They are pretty similar to chain guns actually. They are both of them are used on rammers and pretty much only on rammers, and they have almost the same layout. So ions really compete with chain guns, but chain guns are just so much better than ions. There really isn't a big reason to use them. So I am debating whether I should put them in D or in C. They're still a better rammer weapon than deck cannons, definitely. Hmm. I'm gonna be generous and put them in B tier because I like to pilot ion rammers. Okay, cannons are. We have our first OP weapon. Cannon walls are pretty good, and cannon swarms are extremely strong. Um, they basically surround your ship, attack it from all sides, and there isn't much you can do against it. So yeah. Cannons. Anything more to cannons? I think that's it. Cannons can also phase through armor if you ram into armor because the barrel of the cannon doesn't have a hitbox. Yeah, cannons just deal a ton of burst damage and they can punish really quickly. They have a ton of health and penetration resistance, so they kind of serve as armor even. And they're just really good. Okay, large reactors are a must-have. Let's do the other reactors too. Medium reactors are used on ultralight chips, on avoiders, and on dual nukes. I think that's the meta ships they are used on. Is that enough to put them in S tier? I don't know even. I'll just put them in A tier. Or should I put them higher? All of the ultra light chip haters will definitely put it into S tier. Let's just put it there. Alright. Large shields. Large shields are used on rammers, pre-task avoiders, dual nukes. I think it's fair to put them in S tier. They tank a lot of damage, cover a large surface area, and they enable the ultralight nuke bullshit. Okay, now we have large thrusters. Large thrusters are used on avoiders, and more recently they are also being used as turning thrust on some rammers or orbiters even. I'm not really a big believer in turning thrust, honestly, but just because that many ships use them, I should put them in A tier. Okay, small blaster. Small blaster is a niche support weapon you can use to finish opponents off, but that's really all they can be used for. They are used on ultralight nuke orbiters, so but I'm not gonna put them in A tier or something like that because um, it's such a small part of why UL nukes are so good, and you could replace them with a small cannon, an ion, and it wouldn't be that much worse. So I'll just put them in C tier, but they are a decent last resort to kill your opponent, like a small pew pew. Hmm. And okay, now to EMPs. I think I'm going to put EMP into A tier. A tier just because there are those EMP barges that just spam EMP missiles, and with those you can stun lock your opponent, and then you use a cannon ship and destroy them. Not a lot of people use them because they are really unfun to fight against, but I have used them in the past and they demolished some of the top meta ships I was facing with it. So I think that's definitely deserving of A tier, just because of how degenerate the possibilities are with EMP missiles. Outside of that use case, EMP missiles are they are a bit underused in the meta, but it's really hard to find. It really is hard to find a good home for EMP missiles. It's just kind of awkward to use them. And even though a lot of the meta has shields, it's really hard to hit EMP and immediately punish when the enemy shields are down. So, yeah. But just for that degenerate alpha EMP strategy, I'm putting them in A tier. Mines I'll also put in A tier because they are an extremely strong support weapon. You can use them on avoiders to punish rammers that kite you. You can use them on kites, of course, for the same reason, or you can use them on rammers as a side weapon to as a support to when you're in a spin with an enemy, you launch the mines and they just destroy the opponent's side completely. Yeah, nukes are obviously broken. They are the best support weapon in the game. If you have any ship, you can put side nukes on it and it's gonna be better. At least as good as it was before. TV Rail use side nukes, rammers use side nukes, and of course UL nukes use nukes as their main weapon, and their UL nukes are probably the most hated ship type in the game because they are so strong and unfun to fight against. And yeah, okay. Okay, I have put mines into A tier, but mine factories are just. They are pretty meh. Most of the time when you use mines, you only use mine preload because the launcher holds 3 volleys of mines, and that's just enough in most matchups. You really don't need more. If you want more, using storages is completely fine, and using factories is just such overkill most of the time. But there is the niche use case on kites, or like I've seen the missile kite from Night Lord that had mine factories, and I would say that's a pretty decent use case on them. But the bigger use case is on missile orbiters as a support weapon. You can continuously launch mines, and it makes it a lot harder for enemy ships to get a side or even back ram, where the missile orbiter is very vulnerable because yeah, the mines just block that path, and if you fly into them, you're gonna take a ton of damage. But those use cases are pretty niche, and I personally prefer to just put more missiles on my Morbiter. But it's viable enough to put it into C tier. Alright, mining lasers. Um, hmm. Can I still put them in bad? They were. I would have even placed them in C tier, but since because they had a buff a few months ago, I don't know, but they were nerfed again because some people were complaining that mining lasers were almost usable in PvP. So now, I guess I can put them into D tier. The thing with mining lasers is they deal like no damage, but you can put them behind a lot of armor and they are hit scan. So you don't need as much thrust as on deck cannon ships because you don't rely on rams. You can orbit an opponent and still deal some damage, like as much damage as you would do in a ram. It feels really funny putting mining lasers in the same tier as deck cannons, but I think I think that's a good spot for them. Funnily enough, they are even useful in domination. They are usable in domination because you can put so much armor in front of them, which is really good in domination. Okay, now MRT. Yeah, they are obviously S tier. They give millions of kilonewtons of thrust. They made the speed matter even more extreme. Not much to say about them. They are used on rammers. They are used on orbiters, which already are more than 50% of ships probably. Okay. Nuke factories. I really like nuke factories. I think nuke factory orbiters are really good. And there are also ships. Yeah, but that's really their only use case. I'm gonna put them in good because they are on a pretty good but kind of niche archetype. Yeah, that archetype just uses nuke factories to just churn out nukes and so that you can waste them and use ammo a lot more freely than with regular UL nuke orbiters. Okay, point defense. Point defense is usable in one and only one case, and that is kites. And kites are alright. Pretty much no one uses kites, but if you use kites, you most likely want point defense because it protects you against railguns and against cannons and against missiles. Especially missiles are pretty hard to deal with as a kite if you don't have PD because everything is so vulnerable. Kites in general not that great in the meta currently, but if you do have a kite, you definitely want PD on it. It's like almost essential. Okay, railguns, S tier. There are TB rails, there are spinner squibs, and there was a third ship. Yeah, rail traps also. Not that many use rail traps, but rail traps are really, really strong still. Rail traps have pinpoint damage, they can instantly punish. And if you just show your sight one time to a railgun ship, you're just instantly dead. So they definitely belong into S tier. Okay, A tier. Oh, okay. The small reactor. Small reactors are exclusively used on swarms in elimination. Swarms are really, really good, but they are only useful on swarms, so I'm only gonna put them into A tier. Like, I don't think one top meta ship is enough to justify the spot in S tier, so I'll leave them here for now. Small shields, they are used on cannon walls and on avoiders, and that's pretty much it. Both of those ships are pretty good. Nothing amazing though, so A tier. Okay, small thrusters, all of the small thrusters. You can use the small thrusters as support thrust on your swarm ships, and that's pretty much the only use case. The thing is, the AI is really bad at flying, especially at flying small swarm ships, and the small thrust really helps the AI there. So it's not as essential as the small reactor, so I'm just gonna put them into B tier. Standard thrusters. Honestly, I don't. There isn't. The only real use case for standard thrusters is on avoiders. But even on avoiders, in every place you would use standard thrusters, you kind of want to avoid them because using large thrusters is so much more efficient, and the ramp up from the large thrusters isn't that big of a deal compared to the standard thrusters. So even avoiders try to avoid the standard thruster. So for that reason, I'm putting it into C tier. Some people also use it on their MRT ships with turning thrust, but even their large thrusters are just better, and you really want to avoid the standard thrusters. I'm even considering putting them into D tier. I think the C tier is fine for a niche use case on avoiders. Okay, small cannons. Small cannons are good as a support weapon on avoiders because they can quickly punish. Their projectile speed is very fast, so they are likely to hit, and they create fires. If you just fire one volley and a random shot hits your enemy MRT, sets it on fire, that can just win you the game outright. So it's just a pretty annoying support weapon to deal with. You always have to be mindful of those small cannons. And yeah, if you're fighting lasers, for example, they can punish quickly, so you can just show your back to the enemy laser ship and turn around. But against small cannons, you never want to risk them, because if you get set on fire, it can just be over. So for that, I'm gonna put them into B tier because they are a bit more niche. You only use them on small shield avoiders and on some orbiters. So they're definitely more niche than the other A tier weapons. Okay. How good is storage? You need storage for all of the ammo weapons, so it's a must-have. Well, I could maybe go off of what shape is used the most often, but I'm not really interested in doing that, and you're probably also not. Structure is you use them on rammers for bumpers, and yeah, you use them to hold up spaced armor. I just put all of those in must have. But this triangle right here is pretty useless. You can use it in spinner cores sometimes when you're making a spinner to make it a bit rounder. So I'll put it into bed actually. But all of the other structure piece is pretty useful. Okay. Now that I think of it, the 1x1. Could I also move that down? Okay, I'm not interested in thinking about that. So I'll just get to the last part, the last part, the tractor beam. And the tractor beam is used on TB rail, the top meta ship. And it's also pretty decent on some walls, some weird walls, and on ion ships. So I think the spot in A tier is definitely deserved. And yeah, that's all of the parts in Cosmo tier ranked for PvP viability.